Russia-Ukraine war live, NATO in close contact with Finland, Sweden and Turkey for talks. The brutal Russia-Ukraine war has entered day 85. In a massive move, Sweden and Finland moved ahead with their applications for NATO membership, leading Moscow to reiterate warnings of far-reaching consequences. After over 2 months of battle, Azovstal defenders were evacuated. Meanwhile, the U.S. announced an additional $215 million as food aid to Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers destroyed 8 Russian tanks and 20 other equipment. Ukrainian soldiers destroyed 8 Russian tanks and 20 other units of enemy equipment in the area of responsibility of the joint. The Allied Forces Group stated that in the Donetsk and Luhansk districts, Allied Forces fighters are still conducting a defense operation. It also said, along the entire defense lane, the enemy uses combat aviation, base-fire jet systems, large-caliber barrel artillery, tanks, mortars of various systems, launches missile and bomb strikes on civilian infrastructure, peaceful residential areas to fall. Zelensky's advisor says negotiations between the presidents will happen if there is a need. Mikhail Podolyak, advisor to the head of the Ukrainian president's office, stated that negotiations between Ukrainian and Russian presidents will take place if Ukrainian society and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He said that of course, negotiations between the presidents of Ukraine and Russia will take place if there is a need for Ukraine and the Ukrainian president. Ukraine's FM lauds European Parliament for backing the establishment of Russian War Crimes Tribunal. As the European Parliament has backed the creation of a Russian War Crimes Tribunal, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba praised members of the European Parliament for voting in favor of a resolution urging the EU to support the establishment of a special. Zelensky praises the U.S. Senate's approval of a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine. After U.S. Congress announced that it will approve a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that he praised the U.S. Senate's approval of the additional Ukraine Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2022 and that $40 billion is a significant contribution to the restoration of peace and security in Ukraine, Europe and the world, and they look forward to the signing of the law by U.S. President. G7 countries agree to give $18.4 billion to Ukraine. On Thursday, the G7 finance ministers decided to contribute $18.4 billion to help Ukraine pay its bills in the coming months, and stated that they are willing to support Kyiv throughout its conflict with Russia and do more if necessary. The statement said that the G7 will continue to support Ukraine throughout this battle and will do more if necessary. U.S. Senate to approve $40 billion aid package for Ukraine. The U.S. Congress is set to approve a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine on Thursday, which is the latest manifestation of POTUS Joe Biden's pledge of continuous support for Kyiv as it battles Russia, as per media reports. Just hours before the House of Representatives was poised to comfortably pass the bill, Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell stated that aid for Ukraine goes much beyond charity and that the outcome of this fight will influence the future of American security and vital strategic interests. Zelensky says Ukrainians will fight for freedom, but they must not forget the casualties. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Ukrainians will fight for freedom, but they must not forget that tens of thousands of lives are on the line. In an address to students and rectors of Ukraine's higher educational institutions, President Zelensky said that they will undoubtedly choose independence and, like other countries that have battled for independence and succeeded, they will do that. It will be recorded. He claimed that they are the true masters of their own lives and futures, but they must never forget that tens of thousands of lives have been lost as a result of all of this. U.S. Defense Secretary discusses Ukraine situation with Israeli counterpart. Pentagon stated that U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reviewed the situation in Ukraine, the Middle East and Iran with Israeli Defense Minister Benjamin Gantz during talks in Washington. The Pentagon said in a statement that Austin underlined that the Department of Defense placed a special focus on working closely with allies and partners to support Ukraine in defending against unjustified and unfair Russian aggression. Ukraine destroys 10 units of Russian armored vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles and 2 enemy tanks. 10 Russian armored vehicles, an infantry fighting vehicle, and 2 tanks were destroyed by Ukrainian paratroopers. The 80th Separate Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces assault troops stated that during today's tough action, one of the 80th Separate Assault Brigade's troops destroyed roughly 10 armored vehicles, while 2 tanks and an infantry fighting vehicle were also destroyed. Sweden calls for a halt to Russian oil and gas imports. The Swedish parliament issued a statement on Thursday claiming that the Swedish government will take steps to prevent the purchase of Russian gas. It also stated that Swedish energy imports, particularly fossil fuels like natural gas and oil, must be stopped if possible, and that the government should conduct a thorough examination of current Russian imports. NATO in close contact with Finland, Sweden and Turkey for talks. NATO Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, said that he is in talks with Turkey and the 2 Baltic nations Finland and Sweden to make a quick decision to welcome the 2 countries into the alliance. Speaking during a visit to Copenhagen, Stoltenberg said it was not unusual for members of the alliance to have a different opinion. He was referring to Turkey's recent comments that it will oppose the Nordic countries' membership bid. Stoltenberg said, "We have much experience in NATO, when there is a difference of opinion, of sitting down and finding solutions. NATO is in close contact with Finland, Sweden, and Turkey. We are addressing the concerns that Turkey has expressed." Finland against establishing NATO military bases or getting nukes, says PM. Finland on Thursday reiterated that it will not establish NATO's military bases or acquire nukes if it successfully joins NATO, Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin said in an interview with Italian newspaper Corriere I don't think there is any interest in deploying nuclear weapons or opening NATO bases in Finland, she reiterated. Marin emphasized that Finland's membership in NATO will not imply permanent NATO bases or nuclear weapons and would not be a threat. Russia plans to cut Luhansk region off by capturing Lysychansk. Russian troops are planning to cut off the Luhansk region from other Ukrainian regions by seizing control of the Lysychansk, Bakhmut highway, head of the Luhansk Regional Military Administration, Serhiy Haidai, informed. Unfortunately, the situation is getting worse. Because the enemy amassed all its forces in order to either take Severodonetsk or cut the Lysychansk-Bakhmut route. And it's not just in the area of Popasna or Bilohorivka. They are already trying to cut the route near Bakhmut in order to make it impossible to evacuate people and thwart humanitarian deliveries, said the head. In Severodonetsk, the Russian army is pummeling civilian infrastructure. They are already finishing off infrastructure related to water and electricity supplies. They just want to destroy the city, Haidai said. UK PM, Ukrainian President discussed military support, food insecurity. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday held talks and discussed military support for Ukraine, global food security, economic damage to the world, among many other. The leaders discussed progress in negotiations and agreed to step up work with allies, including the US, France and Germany, to define the longer-term security architecture for Ukraine, Downing Street has informed in a statement. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson pledged the British solidarity with the Ukrainian people, particularly for the brave defenders of Mariupol. Johnson raised concerns about the growing global fallout from Russia's illegal invasion and President Putin's craven and reckless blockade of Ukraine's Black Sea ports, including rising food prices in developing countries. Johnson set out the support flowing to Ukraine's defense, including long-range artillery, shore-to-ship missiles and unmanned drones. US President Biden welcomes Swedish, Finnish leaders to White House. U.S. President Joe Biden welcomed his Finnish counterpart President Sauli Niinisto and Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson to the White House. The visit came after the two Baltic nations submitted NATO applications to join the alliance. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told reporters that the meeting will have the three nations to coordinate on the path forward and compare notes on the two nations' bid to join NATO. Germany's health minister pledges to help Ukraine maintain health system. Germany's health minister pledged Thursday to help Ukraine maintain its health system, which has come under severe pressure due to the war with Russia. Associated Press. Karl Lauterbach said Ukraine's health minister, Viktor Lashko, briefed his counterparts from the group of 7 leading democracies during a meeting on Thursday. Lauterbach said Germany would help establish specialist centers in Ukraine for people suffering from burns and severe trauma due to the war. Lashko also asked for more prostheses to help people who have lost limbs in the war. It's sad but true that many civilians have lost limbs, Lauterbach said. Among them are many children. Kremlin says Ukrainians have a say on future. Kremlin says it will be up to residents of areas in Ukraine controlled by Russian troops to determine their future status. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Thursday that people living in such places must determine how and with whom they want to live. Peskov made the statement during a conference call with reporters after being asked about some Russian officials saying that Russia could move to incorporate the captured Kherson region of southern Ukraine. The Kremlin spokesman responded by saying that authorities need to focus on providing basic services to the residents of areas under Russian control. Asked about a plan reportedly proposed by Italy for a political settlement of the fighting in Ukraine, Peskov said the Kremlin was unaware of it but only learned about it from media reports. Russia accuses nuclear alliance of NATO of waging proxy war. Russian delegation on Thursday accused what it described nuclear US-UK-France troika and the nuclear alliance of NATO of waging a proxy war strategy against Russia. In a statement made at the Military Security and Arms Control Summit in Vienna on May 18, Moscow also lambasted U.S. Democratic Majority Leader Res. Hoyer for openly declaring that the U.S. is in a state of war with Russia. Seems Western malicious attempts to accuse Russia of aggressive nuclear rhetoric would never end. Meanwhile, Russian doctrine has a purely defensive nature, Moscow's delegation asserted. Russia reaffirmed that nuclear war must never be fought and any military conflict between nuclear powers be avoided as declared by P5. The former accused the West of flaring the Ukraine conflict by supplying weaponry to Ukraine to kill Russian forces. Pentagon and its allies have supplied more than 60 anti-tank missile systems and more than 25 manpads to the Kyiv regime. Now U.S. DoD Secretary L. Austin admits such dangerous weaponry is difficult to track and prevent from getting to the wrong hands via the black market, posing a big threat to commercial airlines and transport. Russia. For years, the U.S. has used Ukraine to covert its covert biological programs, including on the mentally disabled and children, who have been considered test subjects for tuberculosis and other dangerous pathogens. Russian goal is to end this mill bioactivity for good, the delegation said. Justifying the war in Ukraine, Russia stated that its special military operation is being conducted to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine, to defend the people of DPR, LPR and Ukrainians themselves against Nazi. The Russian people express firm support for the operation which will continue to go as planned, the delegation said. Turkey accuses Finland, Sweden of financing terrorists. Ankar's leader President Tayyip Erdogan has asserted that NATO must not expect Turkey to approve Baltic nation Sweden and Finland's membership bid without them first extraditing the terrorists that the Turkish government had requested. Swedish and Finnish delegations should not come to Turkey to convince it to back their membership. In an interview posted on his Twitter account, Erdogan accused Sweden and Finland of harboring and financing terrorists as well as supplying them with weapons. Turkey accuses Finland, Sweden of financing terrorists. Ankar's leader President Tayyip Erdogan has asserted that NATO must not expect Turkey to approve Baltic nation Sweden and Finland's membership bid without them first extraditing the terrorists that the Turkish government had requested. Swedish and Finnish delegations should not come to Turkey to convince it to back their membership. In an interview posted on his Twitter account, Erdogan accused Sweden and Finland of harboring and financing terrorists as well as supplying them with weapons. Turkey has made over 33 extradition requests of the terrorists over the past 5 years, with Sweden and Finland that it says has links with Kurdish militants that attempted a coup in 2016 to overthrow Erdogan's government. Turkey also blamed Fethullah Gulen, a reclusive US-based Muslim cleric, for the coup. Erdogan has also lately accused the US of lifting sanctions on regions in Syria held by YPG/PKK terror group, whom Washington calls an ally in the fight against ISIS/Daesh in Idlib. Ankara lambasted both Sweden and Finland for supporting Kurdish rebels, calling their stance unacceptable and outrageous. WHO's chief Tedros speaks to Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, on Thursday spoke with Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, about the situation in Ukraine and safe evacuation of the civilians in occupied regions and providing them with adequate. Tedros tweeted that he requested safe access to Mariupol, Kherson, southern Zaporizhia and other besieged areas to deliver health aid. He added that the civilians must be protected.